I watched 100 MMA fights and tracked who won, how they won, and what the winner did that the loser didn't. What I found contradicts almost everything casual fans believe about this sport. 7 findings. The last one matters more than the other 6 combined. Finding 7. Most fights don't end with a finish. Fans think MMA is about knockouts and submissions. That's what gets clipped. That's what goes viral. But when you watch full fights, the majority go all 3 rounds and land on the judges' scorecards. The UFC data confirms it. Submissions account for roughly 1 in 5 finishes, and that rate keeps dropping. Fighters survive positions that ended careers a decade ago, so fights go longer, rounds stack up, and the scorecards decide everything, not the highlight reel, the scorecard. Most fans don't think about what that means. If most fights go to decision, then the guys who win rounds win fights. And the fighters who understood that had a clear edge. They weren't loading up on every exchange hoping for a knockout. They were jabbing to the body to slow the other guy's movement, landing clean 2-piece combinations and resetting, taking angles after exchanges instead of standing in the pocket. Small things, but those small things stack into leads the other fighter can't erase. The fighters who kept chasing finishes and ignored round management lost close decisions. Over and over. They had the power to end it, but not the patience to win it. Think about what that looks like. A guy throws everything in round 1, lands bombs, looks incredible, but he doesn't get the finish. Now rounds 2 and 3 belong to the patient fighter across the cage. The exciting guy just lost a fight he looked like he was winning. Casual fans reward aggression. Judges reward clean, visible scoring. Until you understand that difference, scorecards will keep surprising you. And that leads straight to finding 6. Finding 6. The fighter who controls where the fight happens wins it. Most fans think the harder hitter wins. The data says the fighter who picks the range and position wins, and you could see it in very specific ways. The winners cut off the cage instead of chasing. They used lateral movement to force the other fighter into the fence. They closed distance on their terms, behind a jab, behind a feint, behind a level change, instead of walking forward with their chin up. When one fighter controlled position, the other guy started backing straight up. That's the tell. A fighter moving backward in a straight line is a fighter losing the round. His combinations get shorter. He stops throwing first. He starts reacting to everything instead of creating anything. That's where rounds slip away quietly. The fighters who got stuck on the fence lost time, lost position, and lost rounds. Even when they weren't getting hit clean, being pressed against the cage looks like losing. And in MMA judging, looking like you're losing usually means you are losing. This kept showing up. The fighter on the fence would land a decent shot, but because he threw it while being backed up, it didn't look like a fence. It looked like a defensive reaction. The same punch thrown while moving forward would have scored the round. Position changes how strikes are perceived. It didn't matter whether the controlling fighter used pressure striking or cage wrestling. What mattered was that the other guy couldn't fight where he wanted, couldn't set his feet, couldn't find his range, couldn't get off the fence. That's not a skill gap. That's a strategy gap, and it decided more fights than talent did. But controlling the fight isn't just about striking. That leads directly to finding 5. Finding 5. Wrestling wins fights without finishing takedowns. Most fans think wrestling means putting someone on their back. The data says it's about everything the takedown threat does to the other fighter's game, and the effects are specific. Defending level changes drains energy fast. Getting pushed into the cage and fighting off body locks. Sprawling on shots. Re-establishing position after every clinch exchange. That work burns your legs. It empties your gas tank. Even when the wrestler doesn't finish the takedown, the energy cost is already paid. The legs are already heavy, and that shows up in every round that follows. But the real damage is what the threat does to striking. A fighter worried about the level change drops his hands early to frame. He widens his stance to brace for the shot. His jab shortens. His head movement stops. He starts guessing instead of seeing. That's where openings appear. Not because the striker creates them, but because the wrestling threat manufactures them. This kept showing up. A wrestler feints the level change, the opponent drops his hands, and the overhand lands clean. That sequence happened over and over. The takedown didn't even need to land. The threat alone rewired the opponent's guard. And when submissions did finish fights, the data told a clear story. The rear naked choke was the most common finish. Chokes outnumbered joint locks overall. That means the submissions that actually end fights come from dominant back control and top pressure. Not from scrambles, not from pulling guard, from control. Here's the part casual fans miss. They see a wrestler go 3 for 10 on takedown attempts and think the wrestling failed. It didn't. Those 7 stuffed attempts still drained the opponent's legs, still forced his hands low, still broke his jab timing. The takedown stat tells you almost nothing about the wrestling's real impact. That damage doesn't show up on the stat sheet, but it shows up on the scorecard every time. Wrestling creates openings, but what you do with those openings matters just as much. That's finding 4. Finding 4. Throwing more doesn't mean winning more. Fans see a fighter throwing 100 strikes and assume he's dominating. The data says otherwise. High volume with low accuracy didn't win rounds. The fighters who threw sloppy, wide combinations lost decisions to fighters who threw less but picked their spots. Clean counters beat naked combinations. A jab cross behind a feint beat 3 wild hooks thrown from too far away. Body head variation beat headhunting. That's what the scorecards rewarded. Not activity, accuracy. Judges don't care how many times you swung. They care how many times you landed clean. UFC stat leaderboards show strike totals climbing every year. But in my sample, the highest output fighter didn't always win. The winner was the one whose strikes had purpose. A jab to measure distance. A body shot to bring the hands down. A cross timed off the opponent's jab return. Every shot set something up. Nothing was wasted. There's a real difference between throwing strikes and investing strikes. The efficient fighters would land 2 clean shots when the opening was real, then circle off, feint, draw the reaction, counter. Less exciting to watch, but the damage added up. And they still had gas in the tank for the later rounds. That's the trade-off casual fans don't see. The volume guys had 2 good rounds. Then the arms got heavy. The punches turned into arm punches. The head movement disappeared. A fighter who can't hurt you anymore is a fighter who's losing rounds. And once the output drops, you bleed rounds fast. That feeds directly into finding 3. Finding 3. Cardio decides close fights. Most fans think power decides fights. In close fights, the data says cardio does. The fighter who managed energy better took the late rounds, and late rounds are where close fights get decided. That's the math casual fans never think about. When a fighter gets tired, you can see it in specific ways. The chin comes up, the feet stop moving, the check on the calf kick stops happening, the hands drop between exchanges. Shots he slipped in round 1 land, flush in round 3 because his head isn't moving anymore. His body stops doing what his brain asks. And fatigue compounds. Tired fighters stop reading feints. They stop circling off the cage and start backing straight up. They stop returning fire after defensive exchanges. Every small defensive habit that kept them safe early just disappears. The opponent doesn't have to change strategy. The tired fighter beats himself. Tired fighters do one of 2 things. They shell up and stop engaging, which gives away rounds on activity. Or they swing wild hoping for one shot to save them, which opens up counters and takedowns. Both lose. The fighters who pace themselves look boring early. Fewer exchanges, more movement, more reset time between combinations. But by round 3, they were still snapping the jab, still checking kicks, still moving their head. And across the cage, the other guy was falling apart. Mouth open, hands at his waist, walking forward with no plan. The fight was already over. The scorecards just hadn't caught up yet. Cardio isn't exciting, but it decides fights that power and technique couldn't. The fighter still sharp in the last 5 minutes has the biggest edge in the building. But even cardio isn't enough if you can't make the judges see your work. That's finding 2. Finding 2. Making the opponent look bad wins close rounds. Most fans think the fighter who deals the most damage wins. In close fights, the winner was usually the one who made the other guy look like he didn't belong in there. And it showed up in very specific ways. He stuffed the takedown and landed a short elbow on the way back up. He made the other guy miss a combination and immediately countered with a clean cross. He used the clinch to land short knees and then broke clean while the opponent was still tangled up. Everything he did made the other fighter look slow. Judges see this. It swings close rounds. 2 fighters can land the same number of significant strikes. But if one lands while pressing forward and the other lands while getting walked into the fence, those strikes look completely different on the scorecards. One reads as offense, the other reads as survival. Same numbers, completely different story. The best fighters in my sample weren't always the hardest hitters. They were the ones who made the other guy look a step behind after every exchange. That ability, looking clean while making the opponent look messy, is one of the most underrated weapons in the sport. You don't just have to win the fight, you have to make it look like you're winning. The fighters who understood that took rounds they probably shouldn't have. Everything I've covered matters, but none of it matters as much as finding one. Finding one, the biggest factor in 100 fights. More than power, more than wrestling, more than cardio. The biggest separator between winners and losers was adaptation, the ability to change what you're doing when it's not working. Every fighter came in with a plan, but when that plan hit a wall, the fighters who adjusted won. The ones who kept running the same approach lost. And the adjustments were specific. A striker getting tagged by the jab switches to pressuring behind calf kicks instead. The opponent's movement changes. A power puncher realizes the other guy is timing his right hand and starts going to the body first. The timing resets. A wrestler getting stuffed on single legs switches to body lock entries off the clinch. The takedowns start landing. These adjustments happen mid-round, sometimes mid-exchange. That's what adaptation looks like in real time. Not a coaching adjustment between rounds. A fighter solving a problem while someone is trying to hurt him. The losers were often talented, but they kept running the same entries, the same combinations, the same setups, even after they'd been read. A striker throwing the same 1-2 that's been countered for 3 rounds. A wrestler shooting the same single leg from the same distance defense every time. They weren't bad fighters. They were predictable fighters. And in MMA, predictable means hittable. Fight IQ gets thrown around a lot. This is what it actually means. Reading what's working and what isn't. Adjusting shot selection, changing entries, switching levels, moving from open space to cage pressure when the opponent keeps circling away, finding the thing the opponent can't handle, and going there before the round ends. The best fighters didn't just have great technique. They had great decisions under pressure. That's the invisible skill. The one that never makes the highlight reel but shows up on every scorecard that matters. After 100 fights, the pattern was clear. MMA isn't won by whoever is most dangerous. It's won by whoever solves the puzzle first. Next time you watch a card, look for it. You won't unsee it. Subscribe if this changed how you watch fights. Hit the bell so you catch the next one.